What's going on, you guys? My name's Titanots, and welcome to Top 5 Unknowns. 5 more mysterious unsolved mysteries. Number 5. One of the oldest cold cases in Netherlands history made an incredible progress in 2017 due to an advance in technology accompanied by the assistance of locals. Back in 1992, a 19-year-old named Milla Cadore lost her life in a tragedy that took place near Kogerveld. There were multiple eyewitnesses of a man, presumably of Turkish descent, who'd been seen cycling around the area and had been reported as suspicious. However, police were never able to locate this man or pin anyone for the crime. For over 20 years, the case ran cold and no fruitful leads were ever reported. However, nearly 3 decades later, advances in computer technology allowed investigators to scan DNA samples that had been taken from Milla's body, at which point police were able to confirm that the man responsible was in fact from Turkey. Police then began what is known as a DNA kinship investigation, and they invited over 130 men to the station, each of whom lived in Kogerveld at the time or had relatives who did. They were asked to voluntarily submit a sample of DNA, with police insisting to the volunteers that they were not suspects themselves, but rather were looking for relatives who may have had some sort of involvement. The investigation, in the grand scheme of things, actually worked. Just a few weeks later, Dutch police announced that they'd formally identified a suspect and arrested him. The man responsible was now in his 40s, but what's quite strange is that he also happened to be one of the individuals involved in the testing that didn't voluntarily submit a sample. He's now expected to be sent to prison for life. Number 4. Shirley Finn was a well-respected brothel keeper in the 1970s. She lived in Australia near Perth and is said to have had a close relationship with police and politicians in the area at the time. However, her body was found in her car on June 23, 1975. She'd been shot but not robbed, as all of her jewelry and valuables were still present. This allegedly took place just 4 days before a tax fraud hearing, where she was expected to have given police information on several of her accomplices. Because of this, police believed that one of her supposed accomplices was involved in the crime, and had taken her life to ensure that she never spoke of their crimes. An investigation was conducted for over a year but turned up nearly nothing. Police revisited the case but ultimately still found nothing. However, in 2017, police reopened the case again, some 42 years after Shirley had been laid to rest. Most of the suspects were now either deceased or in prison, so many of the individuals involved in the case were willing to talk without fear of major repercussions. Finn was then found to have had a former partner named Rose Black, who said that Shirley had gone out that evening to meet a man known as the Bear. Another witness from the time confirmed this, and added that the Bear was the nickname given to a former police chief named Bernie Johnson. According to another witness, she'd been threatened by Bernie to keep quiet about the case, or that there would be dire consequences if she did not. Police then began to receive varying reports from supposed witnesses. Some stated that Rose Black had been witnessed at the scene of the crime, though this seemed quite unlikely to have been true. A former police officer who'd worked on the original investigation claimed that he'd received a tip at one point which led him to a gangster named Arthur Smith, though his supervisor insisted that he let this lead go. In the end, police have recently received several leads in the case, though none have led to anything too substantial. Police continue to work on the case to this day and hope to find closure at some point in the near future, and hopefully not to cause the trust of the Perth PD to crumble in the process. Number 3. In 2009, a woman was out walking her dog when she came across a series of bones that had been buried nearby. Police were called to the scene, and the bones were determined to have been from 11 total women, with most of them belonging to street workers or drug addicts. The unknown man responsible for these bones was given the nickname the Bone Collector. Officially, no one has ever been charged for the crimes, though in 2018, a police chief stated that the case was coming to a close, as they had 2 final suspects, one of whom was certainly responsible. However, they were having extreme difficulty determining just which one it was. One of the men lived just a couple miles away, and had been arrested earlier for strangling a street worker in his trailer, though he was ultimately shot by the woman's so-called owner. The other suspect was known to have been involved in a string of other crimes dating all the way back to the 1980s. His DNA was found in the body of one of the bones, though this doesn't necessarily prove that he was involved in the loss of life. However, this man has already been sentenced to 90 years in prison for additional charges that have been placed against him in an unrelated case. So at the end of the day, even though the man responsible had not necessarily been identified, both of these men have received punishment for their crimes and can't hurt anyone else any longer. It's kind of a twisted perspective, sure, but at least we can rest assured knowing that justice has been served in some form or another. Number 2. Philip Cairns is a 13-year-old boy who went missing while walking home from school over 32 years ago. To this day, he is still officially a missing person, though police obviously fear the worst for the boy, believing that he likely lost his life on that fateful day. Police have been treating the case as a criminal investigation ever since his missing persons report was first filed. For decades, police have pursued a number of different leads, but the most promising came in 2016. A woman came forward, alleging that Philip had been abducted and lost his life at the hands of a former local radio DJ named Eamon Cook. She was just a child herself when the attack took place, and says that she was present when the man picked up both she and Philip and took them for a ride to the radio station. An argument then broke out, and the DJ hit Philip across the head with an object that she couldn't recall. She saw Philip hit the floor and began to bleed, at which point she passed out, waking up later in the car with Cook. As she made these accusations, the DJ had already been convicted and imprisoned for child abuse and endangerment, though he was now terminally ill and in the hospital. Police questioned the man, and he revealed that he was involved with Philip, but he refused to reveal where his body had been buried. The man passed away just a short while later, and police found none of his DNA on any of the items found during Philip's investigation. However, he's still considered to be a prime suspect. Number 1. The Zodiac is likely one of the most well-known criminals of all time, though he's never been caught for his crimes, claiming to have taken the lives of over 37 people. But before you click away, thinking that this is just another rinse and repeat story, we actually found a bit of new information regarding the Zodiac, and how a man believes that his grandfather may have been the Zodiac all along, even providing photos of him that bear an undeniable resemblance to the original sketches of the Zodiac from the 1960s. Authorities have recently been looking at the case in hopes of being able to identify the Zodiac through means of a genealogical match, similar to the case we mentioned a moment ago regarding the men who volunteered their DNA samples. Police have found what they believe to be trace amounts of the Zodiac's DNA on the back of a stamp that was placed on a letter that he sent in to police. They were hoping that this discovery would yield results in the summer of 2018, though they're still working on the case to this day. However, a man has come forward, insisting that he believes his grandfather may have been the infamous Zodiac. From photos the man provided, the similarities between the two are absolutely unbelievable. According to the man, his grandfather, named Kenneth German, revealed his crimes to one of his 4 daughters. He told the girl this information in confidence, though he said that the girl simply took it as a joke. Much of the man's family insists that this could never be true, though he keeps on searching for answers. One particular point of interest is that in the Zodiac letters, a house is mentioned which allegedly bears a strikingly similar description to the house that Kenneth would have lived in at the time. The two also lived in the same areas at the time, however, Kenneth's daughter insists that her father could never have been involved in such a thing. She even went as far as providing police with her own DNA to see if she was a genealogical match, but the results have not been released. It remains unclear if the case will really proceed as far as pursuing Kenneth as a suspect, but police are estimating that they should be able to identify the Zodiac once and for all in the very near future. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.